The 2026 class is already making waves. Early commits, top targets, and big potential. Let's talk about who's in, who's next, and what it all means for the future of the program. I'm Rajiv. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective. Woo-hoo! Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, we're diving into the 2026 recruiting class and how it's starting to take shape. We'll discuss a few of the early commits, look at some key targets still on the board, what positions we feel need to be addressed, and talk about the big picture trajectory for this group. It's early, but there's already a lot to like and plenty to watch moving forward. So whether you're a recruiting junkie like Justin or just want to get a feel for the program's future, we've got you covered. We are available on YouTube and wherever you can get your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, follow, whatever, leave a review, leave comments. We appreciate all the feedback, and certainly subscribe so you know when we make new content. A couple quick programming notes. This week, we are doing a show on Tuesday night, maybe Wednesday, but I think Tuesday, with Nick Osen to talk about official visits, which, by the way, start next weekend. We're pretty excited about that. We're going to talk about a little bit of that today. But on our show midweek with Nick, we're going to go through the entire list of OVs, which is available certainly on 247's website. If you look at the lobby in the camp, the thread there, the board, you can see his whole thread, which gives you an updated list of all the OVs that are going to be there. But we're going to talk about all of them. If anyone has questions for Nick, he'll be on the show. Go ahead and put them in the comments to this show. Send us a note on Twitter, whatever. We'll ask Nick any questions that people have, especially as things really start to heat up in the 2026 class. Couple other quick things. I have a comment here that I'm going to start off with because this is great. If you like soccer, this is great. Many of you don't. That's okay. Badger and Bournemouth. Rajiv, congrats on getting Champions League spot. Pretty good for the 17th place finisher in the EPL. Tottenham won the Europa League this week, which, as you know, I'm a big Tottenham Hotspur fan. None of you really care about this, but I don't care. I'm going to talk about it anyway. Let's go. So yeah, lots of stuff going on. Justin, happy Memorial Day weekend. How you doing? How's the long weekend? What do you do? What are you up to these days?
I am enjoying the fact that I've had 4 days, have a 4-day weekend, and trying to relax and get my mental health back after a long couple of weeks. So glad to kind of take a rest in for this last few days. And
yes,
happy Memorial Day weekend and I would say thank you for your service to all the veterans that are out there, with this being obviously a day of remembrance, especially for those.
Definitely. Thank you to everyone who's served. I know many of you probably listened to us served. Ryan Herring's our very good friend. He was a submariner. So yeah, thanks to all the people that did that. And certainly we know many people have lost their lives over the years, which we certainly thank you for all your service. Yeah, I'm going to be resting tomorrow, which I'm really looking forward to. It's been a long couple weeks for me with work, bananas. So I'm really looking forward to it. Played some golf today, which I love. I love playing golf. So that was exciting. Did not play that well. But hey, that's okay. So we're going to talk about 2026 today. We're still sort of previewing the NFL, the college football season that starts in under 100 days. Lots of good stuff to talk about. I am going to touch on one college football piece of news, which we will talk about today. But we're going to look ahead to 2026 because official visits are upon us. So the next couple weeks, we're really going to be getting into those OVs, breaking down this class because OVs are where, Justin, a lot of these guys get signed. We'll be able to have some commits. We only have 7 right now in the class. We're going to take you through that and then talk about kind of who some of those top targets are. Again, check us out midweek. We'll get that episode dropped out there. And then we're going to go through all of the OVs this week. And we're going to kind of do that as things progress. Once official visits are kind of behind us, we will, of course, go full on into our preview of the football season, which, man, records are coming out, projected records. It's not pretty. I've seen some people having us at 4-8, 5-7. Drives me nuts. I understand why they say that, but Yikes. Don't love it. Don't love it at all. That being said, let's start here. I'm going to give you the list of who is currently in the 2026 class. And Justin, I want you to tell me who your favorite is and why of this group. So, but since everyone's on the same page, we've got 7 in the class right now. Carmelo Reed is a defensive lineman, 6'7", 250 out of Olympia Fields, Illinois. Aiden Reeder, who was a guy that I talked about on one of our shows before OVs a few months ago, a linebacker, 6'3", 210 out of St. Xavier in Cincinnati. Tayshawn Bardo, wide receiver out of Mishawaka, Indiana. Ryan Hopkins, we've certainly talked about quite a bit. Quarterback, now going to play at Mater Dei in Santa Ana, California. Maddox Cochran, tackle out of Richmond, Virginia, 6'7", 280. Carson Elams out of Fishers, Indiana, another cornerback, 6 foot 175, and Ben Novak, who was, I think, the first guy in this class. Interior offensive lineman, 6'6", 310 out of Maryville, Indiana. Love that we keep recruiting from Indiana. Justin, 7 people in the class, not that highly rated right now. Who's your favorite thus far?
I would say it's probably Carmelo Reed. I think he's got a ton of upside. Huge projectable frame. Guy plays very physical and aggressive, and I think that he has a big chance to be a guy who can be a productive player in the scheme that seems to be to what we have changed this year. I think he can be a great pass rusher off the edge. I'm really interested to see what happens with him when he gets into a college strength and conditioning program, because he looks like a guy who's really going to be physically hard to handle once he gets a few more pounds of muscle on him. But I really like him as a player who's capable of getting into the backfield and cause disruption.
Do you think he ends up more of like a tackle or a bit of a 5-tech?
He's going to be a 5-tech. I would be shocked if he's not doing exactly what Corey Walker's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and he's got a good frame, 6'7" frame, and you're right about the conditioning. Good weight on him. He can easily play at 280 plus. Which would be pretty nice. For me, it's hard not to go with Ryan Hopkins. It really is, because I feel like Ryan Hopkins, if you guys haven't watched film on Ryan Hopkins, and we watch our film on Huddle, I don't know where you guys get yours, but Huddle's always a good spot for film. Yeah, I mean, Ryan Hopkins just has an arm on him, dude. He really has the talent. He can launch the ball. I love how, obviously, we've talked about how mobile he is and how athletic he is. But the guy that I really like is Aiden Reeder. I talked about him before. I brought him up on another show that we did with Nick. Defensive guy, linebacker, probably. Yeah, he's more of a linebacker safety type out of St. Xavier in Cincinnati. Really athletic guy, special teams kind of a guy that can really do a lot of things out there. Very athletic, very quick. And just looks like he's got a good head on his shoulders, and that's a good high school. Again, my nephew goes to school there, and he seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. But I really like him, and I think he's going to be a big pickup. Now, he's fairly new to this class. What are your thoughts on Aiden Reeder?
I really like him also. I think he's a guy who's capable of being a nice pass rusher from the interior. I know for us, he's considered an inside linebacker, and I see him as a guy who's really adept at being aggressive and getting downhill. I think he's got a really good frame. I really like what they're doing with the interior guys. We clearly are getting bigger at that position than what we've been in the past. I mean, it wasn't uncommon for Wisconsin to have a couple of guys that are right around 6 foot, at 230 range. And they have guys who legitimately can play at 6'3", 240 that they're starting to get in there, which is more of like an NFL type, middle linebacker type. So I like what they're doing. I like him as a player. I think that he's got a lot of versatility. I think he moves pretty well in space, which is something that I think the linebacker class needs a little bit more of. So I'm glad to see him get in there. He's got a lot of upside. I really think he's got a chance to be a special player by the time he leaves.
When you look at this class, Justin, we've got 7 in there. We've got OVs coming up soon. What are some of the priority positions that you feel like we need? Because we're going to kind of get into the big picture of this class and kind of how this fits all together. But as you look at the 24 and 25 classes and what we did and what we didn't get, where do you feel like we still have major holes that need to be filled here?
To me, it's wide receiver. Absolutely. It's a position group that is heavily dominated by upperclassmen that potentially is going to clear out after this year quite a bit. And so you need to backfill that. And you kind of have to do it this year because you don't want to constantly be trying to rely on true freshman wide receiver. I think you need 3 or 4. I would ideally say take 4 in this class. Potentially, probably 3 guys on the perimeter and 1 guy in the slot. We'll see what they do with that, but that's the position that I'm extremely concerned with going forward. Not that I think it will show rear its head next year, but I think you need to be prepared for the year after. Then beyond that, Badger Bournemouth putting up here running back. I agree with that. You need to find the next kind of guy in that line that comes after the big 3 you got in 24. You need a quality back that's going to be kind of that guy that's building towards being your bell cow back in a couple of years. And so you want a guy who's going to be able to get in there that has a high talent level that you're going to be able to work off of. I think there's a couple of guys they're looking at on that. One of them that they're looking at right now that I'm getting a little concerned with possibilities on is Ryan Estrada. I love him as a change of pace back. He's something we don't have in that running back room right now. Super quick, a guy who's really kind of shifty and can just fly once he gets into open field. But he's getting some big time offers. I believe he just got an Alabama offer. I believe Oklahoma gave him an offer recently. So that one's going to be really interesting because we're one of his first official visits, and that might have gone from potentially being a guy that we could be looking at as a possible commit to being a guy that may have just walked out of the class. Not that I was saying that he was locked to be a Badger, but it's something that I felt pretty good about an opportunity to win him over here in Wisconsin. And when you have those options that you're going to have with some of those big time blue chip schools, sometimes that makes a guy more hesitant to just commit on the spot, which once they leave campus, it can be a lot harder to get those guys to say yes again when they start taking other visits.
Yeah. So I'm with Badger Bournemouth here. Running back is the top priority for me because, we've got to fill that spot. Now, we've certainly got our eyes on Amari Latimer, which we're going to talk about. But Ryan Estrada did pick up that Alabama offer, and his visit list is pretty solid right now. He's going to Missouri this week. And then he's coming to Madison June 6th. Then he goes to that idiot school up north in Minnesota. If somebody cares about them. But Alabama on June 19th. So he's already got an OV scheduled in Alabama. Okay. He's also got a Michigan offer. He's got an SMU offer. But his top schools right now, or you would say based on his visit schedule, is Alabama, Missouri, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. So we'll see how that goes. But Ryan Estrada would be good. But and another thing for me is defensive line. It's just like we have to load up so much on this. And Carmelo Reed, as we talked about, is going to be great, but he's more of that 5 tech. We need some tackles in there. We need some big guys. Like when we got Jamel Howard, you need someone that can add some size to this area that can, I'm not saying you have to have a 0 tech, but you're going to need a guy that can play a good 3, that can be that defensive lineman. And I know that we had some solid work in the last couple seasons, but one of the issues that we've talked about in the past is unless these particular positions get stacked, they go dry very, very quickly. And I don't want to be a team that constantly has to depend on the damn transfer portal for this particular position.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I will say regarding this, and this is the thing that's been frustrating the heck out of me for anyone that looks at recruiting with this, there is not a huge difference between a guy who's ranked 88 in the composite and a guy who's ranked 90 in the composite. There are many times that the 88 guy is actually a better player than the 90 guy.
Sure.
So stop getting hung up on the 4 stars. And I'm not talking about you, but I've heard so many people, there's not enough 4 stars coming in. There's still plenty of guys that are coming in that have a ton of upside. And there's some interior defensive line guys that I like that are coming in here that I think, while I don't know if they have potentially the ceiling of a couple of guys we've grabbed from these previous classes, I do think that they're quality players that could be very good. They just might not be like top shelf NFL type guys if everything goes together. I really like the Akponu and Pavey pickups from last cycle. Mm-hmm. I think those guys have a ton of upside, and I think they will be very good before they leave here. And I actually think Jamel Howard might be starting to kind of turn the corner. And if he does, that the interior of the line is going to be in pretty good shape going forward. But there's a big but. They have to develop.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge but. It's kind of like the everything but, if you will. You
Well,
did
the
mention,
athleticism is there, and that's something that we really haven't had in that room.
yeah, but that athleticism has to turn into ability to actually stop the run, and that's the thing. I mean, look, you can have all the athletes if you want, and that you want. If you can't stop the run in this league, you are absolutely screwed, and we've learned that the hard way, sadly. You brought up wide receiver a little bit earlier. Your thoughts on Tayshaun Bardo? Do you feel like he is kind of a depth piece? Do you feel like he's a guy that has a good upside? I mean, he's 87 right now, but he could obviously. You're right about the stars. By the way, first of all, these guys still have their senior seasons, so there's a lot of growth that can happen. Some of these guys are going to turn into 4 stars. I think Aiden Reeder will turn into a 4-star. But your thoughts on Bardo? Do you feel like his
Reeder and
Reed probably will for sure? Yeah.
So I like Bardo. I think he's more of a jack of all trades than a guy who I look at that has any particular skill that I look at and say that stands out to me as something that's going to translate for sure. He reminds me a lot, and I said this before, he reminds me of Chimere DK a lot. Like, I think they're very comparable how they move on the field and stuff like that. Chimere had a great career in college. He had 307-yard plus 700-yard seasons or around that. So if he's that productive, all of us will be happy if he's that type of receiver. I think if you're talking about a really strong receiver set, I think he's probably a incredible number 3 or a solid number 2. I don't see him as being necessarily a guy that I look at and say he's going to be dynamic. I do think there are some guys that are coming in these couple of visits that are capable of being that I'm really looking forward to and potentially set us up for a good position if we can close them out. But he's a nice start. I like him because I think that he's actually pretty high floor. I think he'll be a guy that I'll be shocked if he's not getting himself into the rotation. He's not going to be a guy that I look at and say he's going to bust. Like, I would be shocked if he's not at least productive and gets himself on the field.
Yeah, agreed. I agree with you that to me, he seems like a depth piece. He seems like a guy that would fill out the room. He doesn't seem like a top end kind of a guy, the boundary sort of guy, like a Eugene Hilton that you can literally see taking the next step to the next level. But that's kind of the point. I think you're going to need that a lot in this class. So as of now, we said we're 7 right now. Do you expect after the official visits season in June is over, I guess, how many do you expect us to kind of be able to bring through in this time period? And more importantly, how many do you think this class ends up with? Based on how the classes that we've had the last couple seasons, how big do you think this class gets?
I think this is a really interesting cycle. I'm very curious what ends up happening here. I wouldn't be shocked if they go to like 22 again. I just don't know who that is. I look at this and I'm like, you're probably not going 5 deep on the offensive line. I don't think you're going more than probably 3 on the defensive line. Linebacker, I think, is a spot you potentially could add a few more guys in. So it's hard for me to kind of take a look at this and say, where are all these bodies coming from? Now, obviously, wide receivers position, we've only taken a couple of those guys over the last couple cycles. And last year, we didn't even take a running back. So those are extra bodies that we weren't planning on. I mean, there's potential for us to take 2 running backs. And I think there is potential for us to take 4 wide receivers, which that's 6 bodies right there if that happens. So we'll see what happens. But I honestly think there's a pretty good shot here that they get into that 20 to 22 range again for total bodies.
Speaking of wide receiver, Badger Bournemouth asks, Justin, is there still a shot at Dallas Dickerson, who is the wide receiver out of Bogart, Georgia? Well, certainly a top target for us.
He's, I believe, coming in on the 3rd weekend. I don't know what that means. So sometimes so I will tell you this, the priority weekend for this staff is the 1st weekend, starting on May 30th. Ideally, you get everyone in there. Now, that sometimes recruits just can't make that weekend, and it's hard to say what the situation is. I really like Dickerson. I think he'd be incredible because I think he has a lot of versatility. I think he's a guy who can definitely play in the slot, and he's an absolute burner. But I have not heard a lot there. As far as I know, the visit is still going on. I really like him. I would, if it was me and I had a chance to look at this class, he's a guy that I would take a good, strong look at. I will say this. There's some other speed guys that they're looking at in this class. This is probably the most guys I've seen that are in that 10-7 or less 100-meter range. There's not many guys that I've seen. I mean, maybe one per cycle that we've had that's that type of speed typically for Wisconsin. Like, they're making a legitimate move towards getting legit speed on the perimeter on this team, which is something we've missed. Like Ballard, and maybe that's why they kind of saw with Ballard, this is what happens when you have that kind of speed on the perimeter. It changes things for you a little bit.
Yeah, Dallas Dickerson is going to Kansas State and Kentucky before he comes to Madison. One of the other wide receivers that I really like.
Recently got offers from Oklahoma and Florida too.
Yes. Jaden Petit, I'm not sure how they say his last name, but he's on our list for the 30th, 4-star guy. He also has visits after us to Florida, Oklahoma, North Carolina, of course, Bill Belichick now, and Miami. So he's got quite the list. But Jaden Petit is a guy that I really think he's got real talent.
When we talk dynamic, he's got NFL type skill set.
Yeah.
6'4", runs pretty well, really fluid athlete, strong and physical. Like, he's a guy who can create easy separation with his body size. Washington also coming in that weekend. There's another guy I look at that I see NFL upside in. Legit speed and twitch. Guy can really run. And when he gets into the open field, he just separates quickly. And he's got a good frame. He's 6'2". I think he's a guy who could probably play like 6'2", 190, 195, 200. So I think he'll be able to body up a little bit once he gets to the college level. If you can get those two guys in the class, that will go miles towards filling out this wide receiver room.
Massively. Let's get a few comments in here. Will Hanna says, Dickerson is my top wide receiver target. No one runs away from guys on film like Dickerson does. And listen, we're definitely still in the mix here for Dickerson. Yeah. It's definitely not over for him at all. Comment here from earlier. So we'll get a couple here from D.A. Wolf. He says, when should we worry that this class hasn't been coming along yet? Then he goes on to say, if we get a bunch of solid recruits, but no 4 or 5 stars, it still could be a good class. Justin, what are your thoughts sort of on the sort of taking a grander look at this class? Is it a big deal if it's just an average class? Do you feel like it needs to be a class that hits on all cylinders? Where are you from a big picture, like holistically fitting into this team?
I realistically think that this is kind of the filler class after the first two. Yeah, if you feel strongly about the 24 and 25 classes, now you're looking to kind of fill in some cracks and establish some depth. So I feel like you have more opportunity to take some shots at some guys that might be a little bit more of a project and find some guys who add some depth. Like looking at the offensive line in this class, if you end up hitting on guys that are a little bit lower in terms of overall star ranking, but have good bodies that are capable of being developed into quality players, I'm fine with that this cycle. You've got some guys who I think are going to develop quickly in the last 2 classes. So these guys aren't going to see the field right away. Now, there's always a chance that there's injuries. There's always a chance that maybe guys aren't what we thought they were. But with at least the 24 class, it absolutely seems like that class hit the ground running for offensive linemen. And it seems like the guys in 25 aren't far behind. So these guys that come in 26 are going to be fighting for opportunity. And they're going to have some time to kind of develop and get themselves together. So if it takes them a couple seasons to see the field, that might be fine. Wide receiver, I think, is a position when we talk about that. That's one that they're going to need bodies starting next year, unless you're going to hit the portal hard. So other than that, I kind of take a look. Some of these positions we're filling in, I don't necessarily think it's the end of the world if we end up like a mid-30s class this cycle. You'd like it to be better. I just don't see it as being like this huge failure if it is, as long as you're getting some quality pieces in there. And I think that they're in on some quality pieces that potentially you can look at it and say it may lack in, kind of the accolades of the last couple classes, but there's some players I really like in this group.
I mean, my take on this is that it's kind of a lazy take, if you will, but it just so very much depends on how successful the previous classes really are. I mean, with the 24 class, we've certainly lost some members of that class, but we still got, of course, the running backs. We've still got, some of the linebackers that were in that group. 25 class, we'll see how it goes. We believe in the 24 and 25 class, we've got some top end talent with high upside that will generate into being starters. We believe that they're there. We believe the 25 class certainly has that with guys like Posa and Hilton, and the list goes on there. So if that 25 class and the 24 class do grow into it. So a year from now, we're like, yeah, the 24 class is really rounding up into shape. We've got a lot of starters there. The 25 class is hitting the ground running. Then you can have this sort of filler class that fills in the gaps. Definitely from a skill position, that like the wide receivers, running backs, that has to be filled here. And we obviously already got Hopkins. We might take another one. So I think that in that perspective, we've got to fill in the gaps. I always want the trenches dealt with in recruiting classes because I know we're going to lose some, especially in the age of the transfer portal. We've got to find people that we can develop. So that's why I mentioned D-line earlier. But you're right about the offensive line. I mean, last couple of years have been fantastic. So we really can't complain too much about that. And there's been a lot going on there. Family Man Ty asked this question, which I think is really good, and it's the next part of the discussion I want to get into. We're whiffing on a lot of plan A's, especially defensively. Certainly the guy like King Liggins, for example. Yeah. I have low expectations for this class given the state of the program. What is your take on this comment from Family Man? Do you believe that we're whiffing on plan A's? And how do you feel like that reflects on Fickell and what's going on?
I don't think it necessarily is the state of the program as much as you lost your leader of your recruiting department at a time when it's probably not the most opportune time. The most relationship building happens early in the first few months of the year when you're working your way towards official visit season, and you lost the linchpin of your recruiting effort right before you kind of got into that time when everyone really starts ramping up on the 26th class. And we're kind of getting stung a little bit by those couple of months where they had to find somebody to take that role. I think they can make up some ground on it and possibly finish strong here. But the way I look at it is some of those plan A guys, you had a dude that was probably one of the best guys in the country in terms of being a recruiting, heading your recruiting department, and he's no longer here. Ethan might be very good as a replacement, but we need to give him time to kind of feel out the program and get his feet wet in here, because it's a definite step up from North Texas to here. So, well, he may have a lot of talent. He's getting acclimated to a much bigger system. Like, the machine is a lot bigger at Wisconsin than it was at North Texas. So my gut instinct is that things will get better as the cycle goes on, and especially if the team starts to play fairly well. There might be some flips that happen in this cycle. In fact, that might be the biggest thing we see, is that if this staff stays on some guys, they may, revisit some of these as some of the teams don't necessarily do as well. I will say this, guys like King Liggins, I like him. I don't necessarily, he's not like a guy that I look at and say he was a lock to be a performer at this level. He's a little undersized.
Yeah, he's like 6'2", yeah.
And I look at that, he's clearly was an interior guy, which is fine. But we have, to me, I would rather see somebody that's at least 6'3" at that spot and has some length to them. I think he could play fine at 6'2", but he was probably pretty close to what his body was going to be at this level. He maybe gets to 300, maybe 305. I would rather have somebody that, if you're going to get somebody that's going to be at that 0 or 1 or 3, that you're going to have somebody that's going to be able to carry 315 if you have to. Because I think that's when you have somebody who can anchor a little bit. And I like some of the guys that we have there, like Akponu. He's going to carry 315 like it's not even work. So we'll see what happens. I like Jeremiah Polk, that's going to be coming in. Arthur Gold that's going to be coming in in the first weekend. We'll see on some of those guys. They may lack some of the glitz. I will say this: most of the guys that we're in on, Iowa's in on too, and we know Iowa can recruit defensive linemen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the whole Plan A discussion, yeah, certainly King Liggins was a loss, but I think that in this day and age of the transfer portal, NIL, and all this stuff, I think some of that, in my opinion, is a little bit overblown now because you said it right. Like, okay, so Indiana and Illinois, two perfect examples of teams that are currently getting a lot of hype. I will continue to bang the drum that I'm so tired of hearing Indiana's name anywhere because they had one season. Welcome to the world, Indiana. Thanks for finally playing football.
Have they ever had
Calm
a top
down.
25 class even?
Right. Just settle down with that nonsense. So my point being that those two teams specifically could very, very easily have rough starts to the season, right? King Liggins is going to Illinois. Blake Smythe was a guy that's going to Indiana. There's a lot of guys that we could easily flip from, not necessarily those schools, but schools that have a rough start, right? That don't kick off 25 season looking good, and all of a sudden these 26 guys who are maybe they're having strong senior seasons, maybe this guy like King Liggins is now a 4-star, and all of a sudden he's like, do I really want to go to Illinois? Is this really where I want to be? Like, Luke Fickell's ability to do it on the field plays a massive role in his ability to actually close as time goes on. The 24-25 class, now the classes that he's trying to build, they want to see it on the field. Like, he's got to prove it now. So we have to see that. So I do think there's ability to flip. And that's why I don't really get bent out of shape about losing Plan A guys. Because first of all, we don't always know what the plans are. We don't know exactly what those boards look like. And I think sometimes we think we know who the Plan A is, and we'll talk about it. And we're wrong a lot about it as well. But ultimately, it's about the fit for the program. So I'm not one of those guys that gets too bent out of shape about losing some of these guys right now. King Liggins, I did want. The athleticism was there. I wanted him. But it's okay. I want Amari Latimer. I want a lot of guys, but I don't think it's the end of the world if we don't get them.
They have some really nice players coming in this group too. In this first weekend, you have Jackson. Was it Jackson?
Yeah, I'm going to pull up that list here in a minute. And let's do that now. Actually, I've got the list going right now. So we are going to do a full breakdown of this with Nick Osen. So any questions that you have, send us a note. We'll do that. So first of all, a couple of recruits that we already got. Carson Elam's and Tayshawn Bardo are both coming in. So that's great.
Hopkins too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He's not on the list yet. But yeah, Zachary Washington. He's the wide receiver we talked about. Jackson Ford out of Pennsylvania. He's a 91 guy. He's an athlete, 4-star.
And Mikael Blade, two very big time recruits coming in.
Mikael Blade would be, Amari Latimer. That's the running back out of Georgia, 88 right now, 3-star. Certainly a guy that you can look at for.
That's nonsense.
That's my sort of top running back. Trying to think of most people's top running back target. To be fair, as of right now, he is crystal balled 100% to Wisconsin. We're hearing some other stuff. Who knows? Hopefully we can close that deal. Ryan Hopkins will be here. Jack Severs, tight end, 6'4", 225 out of Everett, Washington. Ben Wenzel, again, 100% crystal ball linebacker. Looks like an inside guy out of Appleton. Arthur Scott, Jaden Pettit, the guy that I mentioned earlier, wide receiver, 6'4", 195. He's a big wide receiver. So he's going to be in next week, another 4-star. And then Zachary Taylor, Nick Reddish, Jiju Ba, I'm saying that all wrong, the defensive lineman out of Tennessee, Kamari Blair, Jack Jonda, and Mikael Blade. Now, Mikael Blade, we've certainly talked about before. Of that list, Justin, that's the initial look at the OVs coming in next weekend. And we're gonna bring this up every week. We're gonna tell you who's coming in. We're gonna tell you how it went the week before from our inside sources and certainly from Nick Osen. Who on this list are you most excited about? Hopefully, actually landing at the end of their OV.
Sure. The guys who I would say that we have a good shot at. Well, obviously Ben Wenzel, everyone will look at him. I think we'd be pretty shocked if that one doesn't.
Yeah, that should happen.
But we have a legitimate shot at Jaden Pettit. We have a legitimate shot at Jack Janda. We've got a legitimate shot at Jack Severs. So the tight end room could be closed up. Amari Latimer is definitely a guy that we have a chance to close out in this group. And I wouldn't be shocked if some of these other guys, Washington is another one that's in play for this weekend. It's a battle for him right now between us and Michigan State, but he's a tough guy for everyone to get a feel for where he's leaning. But Wisconsin has really been working him for a long time. And I love Washington's film. So I think you have numerous guys in this first weekend that potentially could all pop. Like it wouldn't shock me if they have 5, 6, 7 guys that end up committing out of this group. some of the guys that I'll be curious on are Ford, obviously, and Blade. Maybe they get it done. Like they have a chance to make it a big impression on those guys. I think it would be huge if they did. I think Arthur Scott's got a shot to pop this weekend, that weekend, and I think Ba has a chance to. And I know Ba's a big target for Iowa, and so is Jeremiah Polk, who's coming the weekend after. So those are two guys that they're really high on.
Yeah. So for me, when I think about the perfect week, certainly Amari Latimer, that would be amazing. Jaden Pettit, wide receiver, would be fantastic. And Mikhail Blade. Now, Mikhail Blade is, Notre Dame. He has an official visit Notre Dame in a couple weeks after ours. I don't see an official visit to Michigan yet, but I'm sure he'll do that. And Purdue's on that list. But Michigan and Notre Dame appear to be our biggest competition there for Mikhail Blade. And that's a guy that we've talked about on this show before. But he would be great. So if we could get Blade, Pettit, and Latimer to me, I mean, I'm already counting Wenzel. Like I feel like he's in already, right?
Yeah.
That's fine. Latimer is that guy that really takes the running back class up a little bit, right? Like that's a big deal. It's continuing the theme of athleticism that we've got, and a guy that can really be like a violent runner downhill, very dynamic.
He's a different type, but he's on the same caliber as Jones and Dupree coming out of that class, in my opinion. Just is a different style of back, but very much that caliber.
I think this may be an obvious answer, but I still want to hear it. Of the guys that we currently have, Justin, who do you think is going to be the hardest to keep?
That we currently have, probably Hopkins.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's going to depend on how much he shows out at Modern Day. I just don't. He's really hard for me to get a read on. He's not a guy who's overly vocal in terms of the class, so it makes me a little anxious not seeing a quarterback kind of lead the class when it comes to recruiting. Maybe it's happening behind the scenes. I don't know. But I will say that when I'm not seeing you be overly vocal and kind of being that guy that we're seeing Tayshaun Bardo kind of take the bull by the horns and be the guy that's out there being kind of the cheerleader for the class. It's tough not seeing that from your quarterback because you want him to be the leader. And I don't know if we're necessarily seeing that.
Yeah, I think, and there was a comment up here earlier in the show about how Badger Berman said we have to keep Hopkins at all costs. Hopkins is certainly a guy that Modern Day is one of the largest and most notable football programs in the country. You look at Modern Day, you look at Bishop Gorman right here in Vegas. There's a lot of big schools, and Modern Day is one of those. If he has a good season, Modern Day, USC, UCLA, Oregon, there's a lot of schools that are going to come in there and really come to play and try to steal him away. Because I think
we're going to be okay in Oregon. I think they got a 5-star kid that
they do. Yeah. But he's certainly a guy that we're going to have to fight with all the way. Michigan State was a guy he was one that he was in on too. But either way, it's all going to depend on kind of how it comes down here. I think we'll be okay. But a lot to get into still with this 2026 class. We're going to break this a little further down with Nick Osen this week. Any other notes on recruiting before we get into some big college football news? I want to tap your brain on.
Not really. I think we'll hold out more on that for talking with Nick because he's going to have a little more insight into what we can look for in terms of who we can likely expect to be adding to this class. I don't know how much he's going to tip off to us, but hopefully we can get a good feel for where he thinks certain guys are leaning.
Yeah. One of the big things I wanted to touch on today is some big news in college football that came out this week, that the playoffs are no longer going to be, they are going to be straight seeded. None of this nonsense about the top conference champions getting a bye. So as Arizona State and Boise State, all this nonsense that had this year, it's going to be straight seeding.
So Oregon's not going to get screwed?
Right. I mean, basically Oregon would have been the number one seed had they had this actually happen. But what are your thoughts on that change? It seemed like it was pretty much going to happen.
It was a slap in the face to have the route that they had to deal with last year, and then have a team like Penn State playing SMU and Boise. Like, what are we doing here when you have like the 4 or 5 seed having that route and then you have the number 1 seed playing the eventual national champion in Ohio State, a team they had already played twice. Like, come on now. Like, this is just stupid. Like, eventually they were going to have a letdown. And obviously they got their butts kicked in the Big Ten title game.
Well, in the playoff, they did.
Yeah, in the playoff, yes, yeah. I mean, I just don't know. Like, it made no sense the way they did it. Like, even when the bracket came out, I think we were all looking at like, what is this? This is garbage. It made zero sense. But I think you need to incentivize the team that does the best at the top should be respected in that way, where they're going to have the easiest first round. Like, you have to earn something out of this. It needs to make sense, and last year's didn't make sense.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a very rapidly changing landscape of college football, whether it's NIL, settlement stuff, revenue sharing, all these things. And this is one of those things. I mean, obviously we started for the first time the 12-team playoff. Clearly there was going to be a hiccup. There was. The seeding was an obvious glaring problem, and it's rectified now. I like that. And we need to continue to make more changes. I think at this point, when you're at 12, you might as well just be at 16. So I don't know why we're not at 16. That'll be a change in the next couple of years, surely. I like the idea of having the bye. And I think that'll be a nice reward for us when we get there in 2026. That's right. I'm calling it 2026, the year of Wisconsin playoffs. Yeah, let's go. But no, it's a good change for the sport, and it was definitely needed. And there's going to be more of these changes that come. Like as this progresses, we're going to start to see these adjustments, happen within the sport. And it was necessary, and I'm glad they did that. I'm really looking forward to how we continue with this landscape of NIL, the settlement stuff, like when this goes into effect and when there's true sort of rev share, if you will, the school can pay for it. How does that really affect us? I know there's a lot of talk out there that, well, it doesn't really matter because schools can spend on top of that. That's true. Yes. But also there's still a limited number of spots. You're still going to fill that roster. If you can pay the players that you want, you're going to be in a better position.
That's exactly what it is when it comes to Wisconsin. There will be certain guys, they'll be able to compete at the level they need to. Whereas right now you might not be able to. You might have a team come in and offer a guy $4 million, and Wisconsin can't match that right now. But if you have to do it in the event that it happens going forward, they might have a chance to do that. That obviously would be a massive portion of your budget, but it's something that you have at least the chance, if you have somebody who you believe is a difference maker on your team, to be able to offer that kind of money to be able to keep them in-house.
Yeah. We'll close out with a couple questions. If anyone has any questions, throw it in here. Badgers Bournemouth. I brought this up on. I talked about this on a show with Ryan this week. I'm curious as to your take. Do you think that Crowdis, DeKale Crowdis, can actually contribute anything next year? What are your thoughts on Crowdis, and do you feel like he's a good addition for us?
I think he's a good addition. Whether or not he actually does anything is another story. We'll see with that. He's a guy who may just end up being a depth piece and gets buried, but. I mean, there's some physical tools there for sure. I just don't know if he's going to see the field. Like, we'll see how they plan on using him, and maybe they have something in mind that they're looking at him right off the bat. The speed definitely plays, but the way I look at it is, you have a guy who's not overly technical. You kind of reduces what your options are with him, and you have guys who I think that you probably look at that might be a little bit more versatile than what he brings to the table.
So he had 16 catches last year, 402 yards at Hawaii, 25 yards per reception, and an average depth of target of 21.6 yards. That is an insane ADOT.
Yeah, he's
means they are launching. They are launching the ball down the field. This guy, because he's a burner. That's literally what he's a burner, and I'm excited about that. I think that he has a role on this team for sure. I think the depth chart with the receiver is very fishy. I don't know if anyone I feel like I've even called different depth charts. I don't even know what the depth's going to be other than the first line. You know what the first line is. And then the second line gets very finicky. Tyrell Henry surely at the slot, but then where does Crowdis fit in? Is he more of a gadget guy? Is he more of a boundary guy that's going to be a number two?
That's where, to me, it gets a little questionable, because if you start looking at it, are you going to put him on the field instead of Tretch? I don't know that you necessarily situationally you might, but I don't know necessarily. Like I think you want a guy like Tretch or Kineberry Johnson or someone who can kind of work in that intermediate over the middle type stuff. That I don't know if you're probably not putting Crowdis in that area, and that's kind of where I wonder how he fits in this situation because you're gonna already you're not taking Jaden Ballard off the field for him probably. Like,
but he can be a depth behind. I mean, he's a boundary guy. He played most of his
and that's true.
boundary.
We'll see how much throwing we do. I think too also is a factor in this. I don't agree with Ryan thinking that there might be under 20 passes. Like one of the things that I said to him earlier today, I talked to him a little bit, and I said, I think you're underselling what Grimes does from a throwing standpoint. Most of his offenses have been in that 28 or 27, 28 to 3,100 type yard range for throwing. Like he definitely has a fair amount of balance with his passing. He also, like that season last year with Kansas there at 2,500, I think that had more to do with ineffective play from Jalen Daniels earlier in the season than it was them just wanting to run the ball a lot. Like they just did not feel like he was playing to the level where they wanted him taking shots consistently because he was turning the ball over. So he ran the ball. But yeah, I think ideally if Edwards is good, you're probably trying to get into that 27, 28 or higher.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that comment from you earlier. I think we want to be a running team. I think Grimes wants to run here because that's
going to be number one.
But then again, at the end of the day, we know that the O-line has a bit of an injury situation with Haywood right now. So if it works well and if the line is playing well enough, then yeah, we lean on the running game and he sprinkles in the pass. The reason I do think that a guy like Crowdis can do a little bit more is because Billy Edwards is a mobile quarterback who's going to extend plays. And when you have a quarterback that can extend plays, your boundary guys who are burners can all of a sudden be more in the game, right? Like they have more of an opportunity to shine when their speed can get realized by just running a go route, and Billy Edwards is going to find time to do it. So I think it's I think wide receiver might be the most interesting position that we have going into next season. O-line certainly is interesting because of the Brunner move to tackle and what's going to happen, or Heinzen or whatever it is. But wide receiver, you look at Anthony, you look at Tretch, you look at Ballard. Okay, those are your starting three. But then it gets very interesting, and who's going to show up? Eugene Hilton could be the best receiver on the roster by the end of the year. That's absolutely the case.
Could be.
Tretch Kekahuna could be what we thought he was and could be an absolute star. Jaden Ballard could come in here and want to prove, as Ryan said this week, that he has one season left in college. He's going to show that he's NFL caliber and he could have a great season. Vinny Anthony could do what Will Pauling did and have a bad year. I mean, there's just so many question marks about this group. And you couple that with the new Grimes system, new quarterback, and I think it's a fascinating storyline. I'm really interested to see how these guys and the one big pass catching target we thought we were going to have at tight end is gone. Tanner Koziel. So I mean, it's interesting. KPB and Kevin says, Rajiv, I thought I DM'd you about the Oregon game. I don't know about that. Send it to me again, Kevin. I don't know what you're talking about, but I want to find it. Maybe I missed it. Sorry about that. So yeah, but again, we're going to get into more of the 26 class on Tuesday. I believe it's Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. One of those days. Watch for us. I think we're going to go live. If not, we'll do a show. Any questions you have for Nick Gosen, send them our way. We will get that out. Justin, final thoughts before we close the show today. Anything we talked about with the 26 class? Anything anything at all?
Yeah, I will say that, honestly, people need to relax a little bit with this class. I still think they're going to get quality players. I think people just need to take a look at this from the perspective of some of these guys may be a little bit more developmental than the last couple cycles, where you can kind of see that, potential a little bit easier just because they're guys that are a little bit further along the curve. Honestly, I think this class will end up having some really quality pieces. It's just, you may not see it in the composite rating at this point in time. And I think that's where I get frustrated when people just want to look at those numbers. And it's like, I don't know how accurate a lot of them even are. Like I look at them and I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me with certain guys. Reed's one of them. I think he should be ranked higher than he is. Carson Elam's is like an 86 on one of the sites, and I'm like, he's not an 86. Like I've watched what he looks like athletically. He's better than that.
Yeah, there's a lot, and again, they're juniors, right? So like when the senior season happens and the film is there, it's that for sure. My neighbor, who is an Oregon fan, says, I heard you love Oregon. Get out of here. Listen to this nonsense. I played golf with him today, and he's been talking shit about Oregon because Oregon's apparently amazing. Yeah, it's awful. Badger Bournemouth. Maybe Wrexham can win the championship next year, and then we can make fun of Justin when we whip them in the EPL. No, I don't want that. I don't want that, Badger Bournemouth.
He doesn't.
I'm tired of seeing Wrexham get promoted and promoted and promoted. Stop it. They're going to be stuck in the championship. I think
they realistically, from a contract standpoint and talent, like there's no way you can't sign like 8 players this year that are championship quality and somehow expect them to be able to make the jump to the Premier League the following year.
The championship is very difficult. That's very, very difficult.
But so is the Premier League.
And I want Wrexham to kind of just live in the reality a little bit and not be going crazy. My last thought, as I will say, is the one thing that we've heard from this coaching staff from day one, from guys like Nick Gosen, from guys on the inside, is that relationships are what this staff does really well. And it's very evident. So when the OVs are over, after this weekend, after the 6th, after the 13th, after the 20th, like when you see these weekends done, and then we look at this class, and we're certainly going to evaluate them a lot more, Justin, after the OVs are done, and we've nailed it. I think the strength of this group is their relationships. Really, really strong. Building, understanding what these guys want. There is a clear pedigree of recruiting that Luke Fickell is growing. Mm-hmm. Now, he needs to show it on the field, and we've talked about that, and we're going to talk about that a lot more. I agree with you. And then I think there is a lot of discord out there about, well, you know, I don't know, this class might finish in the 30s. It might finish 35 or 40 or whatever. It's okay. I feel like the one thing we can say, and the one thing that I will continue to bang on the drum about, is that Luke Fickell knows what he's doing in the recruiting world. That's clear to me based on what he's doing. I trust what they're doing. They will build the relationships. They will keep the people they need, and they will sign the ones that they need. Yes, we do need to have great OVs, and I think we will, but I think this class is going to be just fine. I'm really not overly concerned about it. It's when you start stacking low classes that you have a problem. It's when you start not hitting on key positions. So let's all breathe about this a little bit, and we'll see. Last question here, Badgers Bournemouth. Who is the next guy to commit, if you had to guess? Justin?
I mean, probably Ben Wenzel.
Okay, let's not
if
have
you take him off the table.
Clear as day. Take Wenzel off the table.
Maybe Amari Latimer. Maybe. We shall see on that one, but there's some smoke going in the right direction there. There's a couple other guys that are in play for this too. So I think that Latimer would be the leader in the clubhouse right now, but it wouldn't shock me if there's going to be multiple commitments after this first weekend.
Yeah.
Like I would be shocked that the number's less than 3.
I think I want it to be Latimer. I think it'll be Zachary Washington. That's who I think is going to be. I think Washington is going to be the guy that
he'd be a massive
when we do this show. Yeah,
room.
We're talking next week. I think we're going to be talking about a Zachary Washington commit. I've heard some good things on Washington, so I feel like he's going to be the guy that hits next week. We'll see though. We'll see. All right, we will be back again midweek with Nick Gosen to talk about all that, and again next weekend to recap OVs, and hopefully we have some new recruits to talk about. As always, thanks for joining us, and on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.